1860 through 1870. Women's dress featured tight bodice with high necks and buttoned fronts. White lace was popular for collars and cuffs, as were low sloping shoulders that flared out into wide sleeves. The skirt continued to be full bell-shaped until around 1865, when it began to lose its volume at the front and moved its emphasis towards the back. Hair was worn with the center part into a low chignon at the nape of the neck, with loops and niglets covered the ear. Ornaments for evening wear included floral wreaths, ostrich feathers, pomegranate flowers, wheathers, and butterflies. It was fashionable for men's coats and jackets to be single-breasted, semi-fitted, and extended to the mid-thigh. Waistcoats were often collarless and single-breasted, and trousers were occasionally cut from a narrow check cloth. High-starched collars were worn with cravats and neckties. Hair was parted from the center and moderately waved. A particular hairstyle, known as the Dunderberry whiskers and Piccadilly weepers, were long pendant side whiskers worn with full beard and drooping mustache.
In the 1880s, women's dress featured tightly fitting bodices with very narrow sleeves and high necklines, often trimmed at the wrists with white frills or lace. At the beginning of the decade, the emphasis was at the back of the skirt, featuring ruching, flaunting, and embellishments, such as bows and thick, rich fabric and trims. The middle of the decade saw a brief revival of the bustle, which was so exaggerated that the derriere protruded horizontally from the small of the back. By the end of the decade, the bustle disappeared. Hair was worn in tight, close curls on the top of the head. Hats and caps were correspondingly small and neat to fit on the top of the hairstyle. For men, the three-piece lounge suits were becoming increasingly popular. They were often quite slim, and jackets were worn open or partially undone to reveal the high buttoning waistcoat and watch chain. Collars were stiff and high, with their tip turned over into wings. Neckties were either the knotted four-in-hand or versions of the bow tie tied around the collar. Hair was cut short and usually parted out the side. Heavy mustaches were common, and older men still sported beards. Some men now went clean-shaven.
1900s through 1910s. As the Victorian era drew to its close, skirts for both day and evening were elongated at the back to form a train. The skirt's silhouette was slim at the hip, achieved with pleating and smocking. Any fullness in the skirt was confined to below the knee. For day, ladies wore very high necks, and the bosom was undefined, with fullness over the boned bodice that would often droop to below the waist. Sleeves were generally fitted from shoulder to elbow, from where fullness would extend to wrist. Evening dresses were worn daring and were worn off the shoulder with or without sleeves. Slim, straight skirts, and it was insisted to wear fewer undergarments. Due to this decrease, the high-boned collar disappeared and women's corsets were loosened. It was during this time that clothing started to be mass-produced. This reduced the need to have something tailor-made and ready-made clothing more accessible for all, regardless of wealth or social position. Men would be seen in either a frock coat, a morning coat, or a sack suit. Before the turn of the 20th century, older gentlemen wore frock coats while younger men were opting for morning coats. However, in the 1900s, sartorial rules were beginning to become less restrictive. Vests were usually single-breasted and would either match the sack coat with pants in a contrasting fabric, or the vest would be contrasting with the coat, pants matching. If men were feeling a little dandyish, they'd choose a brightly colored vest to stand out from the crowd. The sack coat was often double-breasted and featured quite a high neck with short lapels. Moving down the body, sack suit pants were shorter than narrower and morning dress pants, but not so short that the socks were ever visible, like you often see today. In the evening, gentlemen would be expected to dress for dinner, black and white evening wear. Rather than Netflix and chill, people in the early 1900s preferred a theater double bill. You will be expected to wear a dark, tall coat and pants, a matching vest, pristine white dress, shirt complete with winged collar and bow tie. Tuxedo jackets were also permitted in place of the more traditional tailcoat, while a Homburg hat was the best choice of headwear for the evening. At the weekend, gentlemen enjoyed retiring to the countryside and indulging in outdoor pursuits such as hunting. The best type of jacket for this was a single-breasted Norfolk jacket with belt or half belt and a loose fit for ease of movement, paired with the knickerbockers and ankle-high boots in black, gray, or brown.
In the 1920s and the 1930s, women shocked their men as the hemlines gradually rose, reaching the predominantly mid-20s flapper style. Makeup became popular and the hairstyles became shorter. Short, sleek hair above the knee, straight shift dress, and the boyish figure was very popular. Thin spaghetti straps were worn to create a revealing and sexy look. Waists were disappearing and the bust suppressed, a narrow boyish silhouette was preferred. The hair got shorter, curves were eliminated, and the line became more simplified. Accessories were a key part of the 1920s look. The accessories were extravagant, big and opulent, taken from the Art Deco and Egyptian style. Beaded bags, feathered boas, and embellished headbands were the accessory of choice for evening. Pearls were a staple accessory. Women were now seen smoking in public, making cigarette holders and cases, an added statement of good style. At the beginning of the 20s, women's shoes still had pointed toe, but were gradually becoming more rounded. In the early part of the decade, simple hats where brims were worn. Later on, the rimless cloche hat became fashionable mid-20s. With the hat pulled over the eyes, the style affected ladies' posture as if necessary for them to tilt their heads upwards in order to see. Menswear during the 20s were classic. Suiting was key. The conservative suit was most popular. Recognized by its jacket, fitted tightly with a high waist and narrow shoulders, the suit created a thin silhouette. Skinny trousers and jackets were worn with pinch-in waist and small lapels. Wide-leg trousers were worn in order to hide the knickerbockers underneath. During the decade, short suit jackets were worn, leaving the long jacket seen on the morning suits and tailcoats on formal occasions. Fedora hats were dominant during the 20s. Originally designed for women, the hat became a male trend when gangsters embraced the accessory.